Hi YouTubers, this is Marina from Frocks Frolics on day one of our Viginia sew along or hack, and today we're going to change the pattern for the bodice. So we have got a complete piece instead of the single pieces. You can use the single pieces of course, but I'm going to change it like that. We're also making some changes to the skirt, and then we're going to talk about options, and I'm going to guide you through cutting out your first Viginia top. And I've actually been to the market, as I said I would in the video that I uploaded on Friday, and I found myself some more really nice buttons. I found a fantastic button shop in LA in the market, really good. And I've also worked ahead a little bit. I've cut out 2 dresses already. I want to talk you through them very quickly. But this is now my selection that I've come up with, slept over it. So I'm going to do one of my dresses in this lovely green, and I've pre-washed my fabric, which I think is really important. What a pain to iron that back up for linen. I'm going to use the green as the base, and then I'm going to use this fabric which I got from Joann's. In fact, they're both from Joann's. As my contrast. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to use this ribbon or just this one. And then these buttons here are the buttons that I got from the shop in LA, and I think that they are absolutely super gorgeous. So that's one selection. And then I've also got here this one, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. It is the fabric which has got a trim already, which of course makes things really easy because you don't need to do any hemming. And I've cut this out already, so I made sure when I was cutting this out, this is actually not with a ruffle, it's just the one length. And I made sure that they ended on the same part here on both sides, so that when I put them together, one is not going to be horribly shorter. Like if this end, for example, was here and that one was there, it would be too short, right? So when you're cutting this out, you want to make sure that you actually have the same length there so that you can put the side seams together. So I cut my front and back. This is the hip height length for this top. And I'm going to put the ruffle sleeve on this. This is for little Magdalena, and because she's, you know, not 3 years old, I'm going to make it a little bit more grown up. So ruffle sleeve, and at the bottom I'm going to put this here as the ruffle. So I'm going to put this in like that, and I think that's going to be really nice. It is twice the width of the ruffle that I normally would suggest, which is like really short and cute. But because I've got this lovely pattern, I thought it was really important to do that. In fact, you could have had the whole sleeve with this ending on that, like a 3/4 or full length sleeve. But I wanted to show the ruffle, so just remember that if you have something like this, you might want to do the width that's really nice with a pattern that you've got, instead of just going like, oh, but the pattern says, right? Be really creative. And then I've got my bodice here, and the one thing I want to say for cutting the bodices, we're going to do one together in a minute, of course, so that you can see it, is because we're cutting it all in one bit, and I'm going to show you just in a minute how we're going to put the pattern pieces together to do that. But I'm going to cut one here on the straight grain, and then the other one exactly the opposite, so that when I put these together, right sides facing, and just sew around it, I'm not going to have one that is really stretchy. And so by having one straight edge and one on the diagonal, that will guarantee that and look really nice. I have used the white linen to go underneath this fabric because I don't want anything to show through. So sometimes it's really good to use a lining that will bring out the pattern and not fight with it. So if I had the same fabric again, that would shine through and it would make the whole thing look darker. So that's this selection. And I've got a little bit of ribbon here It's a velvet ribbon, and I'm going to put this ribbon along edges. We're going to do something really nice here, I was thinking, and you can tell me if not. We're going to do the bodice tomorrow, so I have time to think about it. But my idea here was, what do you think? Please ping me. Is to put a trim on all along the edge here. I think that might be really classy, and then of course put it where the ruffle starts on the sleeve, and I think that might be really nice as well. So that is the one selection. There's always so many things you could do. And then again, this one that I've already cut is for Magdalena, and therefore, because she is size 8, I'm going to make it a little bit more grown up for her. So I kept it all in one color. I'm going to do the plain sleeve, the plain short sleeve here with the facings, and I've prepared those already. I'm going to use 3 covered contrast buttons. Got my little labels from when I used to sell clothes actually, and I think this would be very nice to go on the bodice along it. It's quite wide, but I think that's going to be really lovely. I could let it run straight through the center there, and I think wowza, right? I might also put it where the ruffle is. I'm not entirely sure about that. Again, we can discuss this as we go along, because clothes kind of, you know, they develop. You change your mind on stuff, as you all know. Make sure that you upload your selections to the album so that you can win the prizes, which is 3 patterns, 2 patterns, or 1 pattern, and a surprise for the best hack. You know, the one that we say, wowza, this is so good. This is not drawn from a hat. Then we will all decide together which one we think really wins it, and I'm going to select a prize depending on whether you're in the UK or in the US or wherever, so that it's appropriate. So I'm not saying what it is because it's different for different countries. Okay, so we've got this selection here. Put this to the side and talk about the other selection I've got, which we're going to cut out in a minute. And the 2 that we're going to cut together, or the 1, I'm going to cut 1 on my own, and then I'll see you tomorrow for the bodice. I've got this selection here, which I'm going to do for little Victoria, and I am still undecided whether I should use this lovely trim for the bodice or not. I can still think about it till tomorrow, when I'm actually going to sew this. I'm very keen on showing you how you can put this onto the bodice and actually hit exactly the spot when you put the skirt on, so that you don't lose any because you accidentally stitch into it, because there's like such a lot of little tricks. So maybe just for showing you that little trick, it would be worthwhile. I got myself some bias binding in this blue because I think I can bind away, and I have no idea what I'm gonna bind. So you can tell me where you think that should go. I had these little flowers here as well. Now I'm not sure that that actually goes, but to girlify the theme of the little boats, I thought that maybe I could put the trim over the top. So as you can see, when I go to the market in Los Angeles, it's crazy. But I have to say, I parked on a meter this time, and I was half an hour early back. This has never happened before, because it was, well, in the sun it was 40 degrees, and the shops I went into have no air condition. I was like literally melting in there. I couldn't wait to get out and get home. So that was a novelty. Usually my husband says, well, you know, you took very long. This time it was, what, you're back? I said, yes. So what we're going to do is cut this out. This is going to be with the puff sleeve, and then I'm going to use the flatter sleeve on this one. Let's get started with the pattern. First, we're going to amend the bodice pieces so that they're a one piece and not separate pieces like they are in the original pattern. And you can also, when you've done that, make the opening a little bit wider if you like. I shaved off about a couple of mil on this side here so that it would come over a little bit wider. You can play with that so much easier when it's together in one piece. And then we're also going to amend the pieces here, the front and the back, and we're going to cut off a bit so that we can create a ruffle. So let's put this together. So let's copy this shoulder of the Viginia tunic now. I'm just going to put it onto a little piece of scrap paper and draw all the way around it. Whoops. There we go. I can mark the shoulder as well if I want to, and then I'll just cut it out. Preferably cut where the line is to the right of you, because obviously otherwise you make it that tiny little bit bigger. If you're doing this with a thick felt tip, this could be like not so brilliant. So there we go. I'm just going to go around. It's actually very, very simple what we're doing here, but sometimes you need to see it to just, you know, just the once so you understand it. So this is my shoulder and this is the sleeve head. So obviously that goes to the outside here. And I'm just going to put this on. So I've got to mark it now 2 centimeters down, and you can see I've already done that and my camera was off. So I quickly go over and do it again for you guys. So mark down 2 centimeters. That's the seam allowance for both pieces. And then you take your shoulder and you just line it up here. So make sure your armhole is on that side and sellotape it together. So when you're cutting things apart, you're adding seam allowance. And when you are taking things away, you need to take the seam allowance out. And I do the same on the other side. I turn this over. There we go. And put it on. At this point you might also want to check by just folding over the center that these are actually in fact on top of each other, and they are. So I can now carry on. Take your front yoke now and we're going to put that on as well. So equally we're going to mark on here the 2 centimeters with a ruler. I've already done it once. Yeah, you just cameras, right? It's just all the time they turn themselves off and I don't notice. So this is also marked to 2 centimeters. Now I can take these and put them on here as well. Hang on, which way am I? That way around. I'm getting really hot and bothered. I tell you what, it's hot in here. I can unfold this and just pop it on here. Put my scissors on there so it don't move. And just sellotape it together. That's it. Do the same on the other side. Yeah, just take that one and pop it onto the line here. There we go. And so now I got rid, just put my phone there, of the seam allowance. And I hope you're all doing it while you're watching me. This is a sew along. And so far no ping on my phone. There we go. If you have any questions about this, please do ask, because I am actually there and I will answer them. So yes, so that is done. We have done the front. Now the other thing we want to change is the length of the skirt, and I've already done that here. I don't really like the long length knee height just in one. I think it looks really boring. But if you have a ruffle on there like Emily did, I think it's really cool. So what we're going to do is split the pattern here where it says hip height tunic. So we got 2 parts. And then we want to do the same with the front piece. And again, I've already just done that. So you want to split that, cut it apart to get 2 pieces. Now, because we've split something, you again should be adding a seam allowance into it unless you say actually it could benefit from being 2 centimeters shorter. So I would just measure the length. In my case, I'm not going to do that simply because I'm making it for little Victoria, and she isn't actually that tall, so I'm gonna leave it like it is so that it fits her perfectly on the 3 to 4 age. So I've got that, but you might want to add something in. And what we're going to do, and I'm just going to mark this in here, we are going to cut this twice the length. I'm not going to add this to. What we're going to do is when we cut out our fabric on the fold, is we're going to have the fold right here, and then we're going to place it on there, right? So I'm just going to put my little on the fold sign on the ends here, and maybe mark it cut 2 times, or twice as long. So I want to cut it twice as long. Now the rule of thumb is actually that if you want a really good gather, you want 3 times the length that you've got to add it to it to get a really good gather. I'm not sure I want a total like woo, boom gather, but I wouldn't mind somebody trying that and saying, well, actually I want it, you know, and I want a flutter sleeve, so you can do that as well. And that will be my skirt. The first one I'm going to do though is just with a frill on the bottom, and then over the frill we can put an embellishment, anything we like. It's very much what Emily did, right? It's going to be lovely and gathered down here, and then we're going to have a ribbon covering that stuff up, so we can do that too. So that is all our preparation done for this actually. And I really want to know what kind of fabrics you got for yourself to make this, so don't be shy. You need to put them into the album, and if you do, obviously do it on every day what you've done, pictures of it, then you go into the draw and you can win a 3 pattern pack, or 2 patterns, or 1 pattern, so top 3 that have posted every day. And then at the end, I'm going to put all the names into a hat and I'm going to draw them live, and you can see who's won 3, 2 and 1 pattern. And here's my puff sleeve that I'm going to do for this one. And I'm only going to demonstrate cutting out the one, because you could also go back to the original. This is just to show you the bits that are really different. So let's get started with the cutting out. I'm using this selection I just shown you earlier. I'm going to cut my bodice in the check, and I'm also going to do the little turn up in the check. And then I'm going to do the dress in the white. I'm gonna put the trim in the check again, and some little pockets in the check as well. So that's going to be really cool. But the pocket pattern I haven't actually got out yet. I do that with the skirt. I'm going to leave that. You don't need much for it. So let's get this cut out first of all. Let's start with my bodice pieces. The one thing that I would recommend that you do is to cut out your interfacing for it first. I cut myself 2 bits of interfacing already here, because what's the point of cutting out loads and loads of stuff over and over, like a bodice in the interfacing, especially if you make multiple like I did, and then you have to iron it on, etc. You iron your interfacing onto the fabric first. This is the underside. The one thing to watch out for when you put this on is to make sure that you've got the long piece. That we actually do it. And this actually comes to the front across here, otherwise it's going to be the other way around. Not that it matters too much if you did that, it's not really a big deal, but if you want it exactly like correctly, so it closes in the right place, then you want to make sure that that size sits here. What I've decided to do is to use the back on the outer for the straight grain, because I think it'll look really pretty if it's not the straight grain along here. And then I'm going to do another piece in the white linen again, like I said before. I want to make sure that nothing shines through, and also this is really thick linen, and the white one is not as thick and not as expensive. So So I've got it on, and I can now just cut it out real quick. Look how easy is that, huh? So what I can do now is just use this as my pattern piece to cut out the same in the white linen. What I'm going to do is I work exactly the opposite. I'm going to put the straight grain onto the front so that I've got a piece which will work with each other and it will stabilize the thing. On this part here, I've got the bias now, and so I want the straight grain on my linen. And I cut this one out. How good is that, right? Toot, 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 along it. So now I've got two pieces and they're opposite mirror image. And so that's my bodice done for this. Now I'm going to cut my skirt. And we are using the usual way that I always recommend that you do. You create 2 folds. And now if I wanted to, I could add the centimeter seam allowance in there, like I said before, but because Victoria can do with it like this, it just will fit her better. I'm leaving that out. I'm just cutting it exactly where it is. Sometimes 2 centimeters makes a big difference. In this case, it actually really doesn't. While you're there, you definitely want to mark the center. And I mark the center at the bottom as well, so that when we put the frill on, it's easier. Now open out your front. Make sure that at this point, you put the front piece back on it. And you mark either with a pen, if you're working straight on it. Yeah, we're going to put the little facing against it, and if not, snip where we're going to have the little slit or the front opening, right? Because it's really easy to put it on the wrong side if you leave this. So we can put this one away, and we're going to cut out the back. Ooh, fabulous. And around here. And now I also want to cut my sleeves, so that's really simple. I do want to cut them with a grain. Sometimes when you're working with woven fabrics, it doesn't matter which way you go, whether you put them on like this or like that, if the weave looks really even. But if you're looking really closely, you can clearly see that the weft, this is called the weft, that goes along here is stronger or thicker than the warp, which goes downwards and gives the fabric cloth the stability. So in my case, that would be really daft to do that because it'll look really odd. So I'm going to cut mine here with a grain where you see this arrow. Okay, so again, I won't pin this. I go right to the edge. Yeah, that's where I have to start. And I'm going to cut out my lovely puff sleeve. There we go. You want to mark the front, really easy to put them in back to front. You want to also mark the top of the sleeve, so your sleeve head. And then you want to mark the places where you're going to gather to. And this is just going to be gathered as tight as possible, really, but it's the width of 3 centimeters. Essentially, it needs to fit to our little turn up. And so whether or not it's now 3 centimeters at the end doesn't really matter too much, but that's what we're going for anyway. So I've cut my sleeve. Wonderful. So now I need the other fabric back because I'm going to cut that in the little check. So we need 2 of these here. And if you're using the check and you're using it in a straight grain, make sure that you actually catch the straight grain on there. Whoops, hang on, a bit lower. So it's not screw with. With checks also, it is quite nice if you do it on the diagonal. That's also really nice, but make sure that the lining for your little sleeve is done in the straight grain. Yeah, so that again, just like the bodice, you have that stability. Right. So now I need to cut 2 more. And again, I can do what I've just done before. I can just cut them out of my interfacing and then iron the interfacing on. So the other thing to say for ironing on your interfacing is that you iron without steam, and you can actually leave on your iron quite a bit. When I was training as an apprentice, our rule of thumb was count to 8. Just listen to this. It's LA. Sirens all the time. I'm going to enjoy making these. I hope you do too. Please be really active, upload your pictures there. I'm going to do mine as well as I go along, and then when I'm all done, I'm going to do a really nice ebook with all the different sleeves we've made. And if you want to be in there with your name and your little picture, you can be, because I think that would be so cool. So it's not just me, you know, it'll really celebrate your creativity as well. And then if you don't want to do that, you can just do it to win something. That's also good, I don't mind. So now I've cut out my sleeve, pop that away. All we need is the little frill. Now I'm going to cut my frills. When it comes to frills, I don't need this edge, right? This can be totally straight. So all I need is the width. And when I put my front on here, I can see that it almost goes to the end, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut one that goes all the way over, and then maybe reduce it a little bit because it's a bit wide, to make sure that cutting out is as easy as possible. I always kind of do that. I fold up my fabric, and because I have a check, it's really easy to cut it straight. As long as I put it on all straight, the checks will guide me. So first of all, I'm going to just cut along here. So you could use a ruler to measure this. What I'm going to do here is just use my trusty little marker pen and just sort of give me a little bit of a guide as to the width here all the way across. There we go. Because I'm actually going after the check anyway. Just cut this across. That's one done. And what do we do now? Boom! Just put it on top of each other, see? Not difficult. And I'm going to cut this out as well. That means now I've cut myself the 2 strips I need to be my ruffle. They might be a little bit too long. For this, you know, that might be like a super ruffle, which I don't really want. So what I'm going to do is place my front on the top here, flop it over, and I can see that I wanted only twice the width. I don't really want it much longer. I'm going to cut a little bit off so that I've got this much more at the end. That's about 2.5 centimeters, just an inch, right? And it really depends what you want to do. So now I'm going to snip this and mark this with 1 snip, because that means that's my front ruffle. Now I'm going to do the back ruffle. The back is slimmer. I don't want the back to look like horribly more gathered than the front. So all I'm going to do is same again. Put it on, flip it over roughly. And remember, it was 2.5 centimeters roughly wider. So I go to the same point and cut off the little excess. Snip 2 times so I know this is my back ruffle. That's my ruffle done. Excellent stuff. That's basically it. Oh yes, and with the last little bit that's left over. And that's it. We've cut out. We're ready for tomorrow. You need to cut yours out now. That's your homework, my friends. And that was it for today, YouTubers. And I hope to see you again tomorrow, where we're going to do the bodice. And there's quite a few tricks that I want to show you for that. See you then.